Good afternoon. Welcome to Healing the Brokenhearted. I'm Dale Pugh. That's Wes Ragsdale, and we are both glad you're here today.
We
Uh,
are.
Last week, Wes was out of country, so I just put up a little clip of myself telling a story about God's power. And today we're going to kind of follow that theme about how the Lord intervenes to help us when we need him with all kinds of issues. So, Wes, you got a thought to start us today?
I do. And let me say this first, is we were just discussing this before we came online, is that what you do as a missionary, and you did it then, your main focus was getting people saved.
Mm-hmm.
And so you used the incident to bring them to Christ and to build a whole ministry in a prison due to that one miracle that took place. And that's the way it happened in the New Testament all the time.
Very true. And
People,
I'm even thinking the verse that says he confirmed the words with signs
signs
following.
following.
They
That's it.
preached the word first, and the signs came after. Uh,
Absolutely.
just to highlight what you're saying, one time I preached in a village a gospel message on salvation. No one responded. A week later, same 10 people were there. They listened. No one responded. The third week, same thing. No one responded. But one man, whose name was Orlando, said, I have a sick child. Would you come and pray for him? So I went, and the people that had listened to the gospel went with me. I laid hands on the little boy and prayed for him. He was in a cot, about 2.5 years old. Apparently, nothing happened. But the next week, when I came back, he had been healed. And then I found out what the disease was. That boy had leukemia.
Oh,
And that's incurable. I think it's blood cancer.
yeah.
I'm kind of glad I didn't know what was wrong with it. But you see, then the whole village wanted to receive Christ. So it's kind of like the signs and wonders help people understand who God
Absolutely.
is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to start off with this one related, and it's about Rita and I. So back in 1991, I had the first of three major heart surgeries. And I won't tell you the story now, but on that one, the doctor came to my bedside afterwards and said, "You're not supposed to be here." And
Mm.
that's another miracle I'll talk about another time. So I'm in the bed and I'm recuperating, and we were trying to start a business. So I got well enough that we got in the old car that we had, and we drove over to the Bronx, and we tried to do a little bit of business. And when we were through, we came back to the George Washington Bridge, and we ended up going into there's two levels of the George Washington Bridge. You can either go on the top level or the bottom level. And the car, because of traffic, forced me to go into the bottom level. And then all of a sudden, my my left rear tire blew.
Wow.
And we were in one of the most dangerous spots you could possibly be in, because coming at us were these huge trucks screeching their brakes and barely missing us. I mean, we were sitting ducks. I reached over and held Rita's hand, and I said, "Well, Rita, it looks like we're going to go together, because I don't see any way out of this." Then all of a sudden, and to this day, we don't really know what he was. We don't know if he was the enemy or if he was an angel. But this guy, this skinny guy, he happened to be black. I don't think that's the point, but he happened to be. And he had an umbrella. And he was dancing all over our car and poking the windows with his umbrella. And while he was doing that, I called, technically, they have these units for the bridge, but they cannot come to a situation like I was in and help you. That's the normal. But I called them anyway, and they said, "You're where?" And I told them, and they said, "Oh my God, I'll get some." The guy said, "Oh my God, I'll get somebody over there." So as that was happening, this guy dancing around the car just disappeared. To this day, we don't know anything more about that. But what happened is, what was not supposed to be there came and because in the meantime, a policeman showed up and he came over to the car and he said, "You're going to have to get out and fix this." Well, you should have heard Rita. He said, "Officer, he's just had 5 bypass heart surgery. He is not capable of doing that. And if you make him do that and anything going wrong, I'm going to sue you and the whole city of St. Louis of New York." He said, "Okay." He backed off. And so the truck that's not supposed to be there showed up, came up behind us, changed the tire, and we drove home without being killed. And to us, that was a great miracle because you don't know what it's like over here unless you live over here.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's number one. And then, well, we might as well talk about the first heart surgery. So when I was 30 years old in St. Louis, I found out then that I had 32% blockage in my arteries. And they even did what they called back then a cardiac catheterization. And it was brand new. People weren't doing that back then. And that's what I found out, but they didn't tell me why I had it. I didn't know why I had it. And I did what they told me to do. I went on a diet, did all this stuff, and it wouldn't change. So eventually, through circumstances, I was asked to come and take over as being vice president of a candy manufacturing company, a senior vice president of a candy manufacturing country out here in New Jersey, and also to oversee the person who was handling he was the person handling the where the candy was made, the manager of the making of the candy. And it got to the point that I could not walk more than 5 feet without being in serious pain and in shortness of breath. So I had to have surgery. And it was 1991. I was 40 years old. And the way it did it back then, you went in the night before and you met your surgeon. So he comes walking in and starts telling me everything they're going to do to me. And I thought, oh my God, Rita's going to be scared to death because she doesn't know any of this. But I did. You know, like they're going to split you open, they're going to take your heart out, you're going to go on a machine. It's a whole process. So he finally got through and he went to the door and he turned around and he said, I prescribed Valium for you. I said, "Doctor, I don't want any Valium." He said, "But nobody turns down Valium." I said, "Well, I am." And he looked at Rita and Rita said, "Doctor, he'll be asleep in 10 minutes. And I didn't know it, but he came back to check on me and I was sound asleep. So here's what happened. They did the surgery. And 3 days after the surgery was over, it was just me and Rita. I'll never forget it. She was sitting next to me and I was in the bed. And in come the surgeon. And he looks at me and he said, "Mr. Ragsdale, we don't know why you're alive. You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be." I said, "Well, doctor, what are you talking about?" He said, "Well, do you know what the widowmaker is?" And I said, "Yes, sir. It's the left anterior descending artery." He said, "Well, then you know that if it's blocked for 100%, you're a dead man." I said, "Yes, I do." And then here's what he said. "Yours was not only blocked 100%, it was blocked 100% for a full inch."
Wow.
And the two in front, your right and your middle, were blocked 95%. And when we turned your heart over, the two in the back were blocked at 95%. He said, "There's just no way that you should be alive." And I said, "Well, what do you think happened?" He said, "Well, the only two things we can think about is, number one, this incredible attitude of peace that you have. And the second one is your a tendency to have low blood pressure." So I had to have surgery. Think about this. I had to have surgery to experience a miracle. Figure that one out.
To confirm a miracle. Well, I think that everybody watching is probably thinking they need a miracle. So, Wes, what can you tell people that need God to help them with a personal problem in their own lives?
Exactly. So I actually frequently I'll use this story because I can talk about it without directly going at them about you need to be born again. And it works. In other words, I use it and I use other stories similar to it to work with people without them realizing what I'm really after, which is their soul.
Mm,
That's how I do it.
wow. Well, can you throw in a Bible verse that has to do with how the Lord takes care of us, or just anything? I'm thinking of, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I mean,
Perfect.
uh,
I
I've,
will fear no
I've
evil.
I've looked into that valley, and a good friend of mine, he's a pastor, and someone said, "Pastor, I'm going through hell." And the pastor said, "Well, just keep going."
Exactly.
I mean, C.S. Lewis, there's a verse in the Bible that talks about earth being shadow lands, and he preached a whole message on it.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
So
Because it
tell us
is.
something about getting victory over situations where God has to intervene, and maybe
Exactly.
a sin issue or a shame issue or any kind of an issue.
It can be any kind of an issue. And the other thing that I learned how to do is to talk about the Bible and everything else apologetically. And by what I mean by apologetically is that, well, I'll give you an example. There's a lady that you know, I can't name her on the air because I didn't ask her permission, but she was a school teacher there in Washington, where we were in Washington, uh, in New Jersey, I can't think of the name of the city now where I
Well, it
lived.
doesn't matter.
Anyway, so she had responsibility for teaching basically cooking and that kind of stuff. Then they added sex education to her, and so she had the right to bring in speakers on the subject, and she always chose me for the ministerial side. And here's what I would do. I knew that they were ready for me to start telling them they were in sin and all this kind of stuff. I didn't do that. I started talking to them about them because I said, here's what happens and I know you, I'm just going to tell you what I know about you. I know that many of you date, and when you date, I know that you're having sexual intercourse. You didn't tell me that, but I just know that's what you're doing. And they were all shocked that I would say it out loud, but I did. And I said, but here's the thing. When you do that, you are technically married to that person. And when that happens, and then you break apart, you're killed because you are going to go through the very same emotions, and they're horrible, that any married couple goes through when they divorce.
Mm,
You won't have anybody to talk to because they wouldn't believe you if you tried to tell them. And
hmm.
by the time I got to that point, the whole room was in tears because they understood. And I never one time condemned them. I didn't put them down. I just told it to them like that. And I believe there's just thousands of ways that we can share the gospel like that with people and get through to them without them even realizing that what we're doing. And
Well,
of
that
course,
is
I got that from the great C.S. Lewis. He was the founder of that type of theology.
Well, that is so beautiful because I'm thinking of the story of the woman that was caught in adultery.
Yes,
And what's very interesting about that story is the scribes and the Pharisees said this woman should be stoned to death. She was
yes,
caught in the very act. Well,
yes,
why wasn't there a man there with her? If she was caught in
yes.
the very act, she wasn't
Good.
doing it by herself. That's interesting. But then
Yep,
when Jesus rode in the dirt, and from the oldest to the youngest, they all left, Jesus
yes.
said, "Isn't there anyone here to condemn you?" And they said, "No, Lord." She said, "No, Lord." He said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go thy way and sin no more." But then
Amen.
the very next verse says that he is the light of the world, and that those that walk in him have the light of life. So
That's it.
it's like Jesus was telling her that not to participate in adultery, but then he was telling her how not to. He was giving her something better. And that is about exhausted our time. But I just want to close that thought with what Joyce Meyer says. She says that one of the reasons problems defeat us is because we think they are bigger than God. That may also be the reason why we have such a hard time facing the truth. We're not sure that God can change us, so we hide from ourselves rather than are facing ourselves as we really are. So, Wes, you kind of confronted some issues with those young people, but then you let them know that there was a way of escape.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of what I'd like to close with today. If somebody's watching this, there's a way out.
I have one more thought, and that is everybody watching this podcast, you have stories to tell. And you need to figure it out. And if you want us to help you, we'll help you figure out how to talk about them. But you need to tell people what happened to you. That's really critical.
That is so powerful. That is so powerful. So we are going to close off today, but I want everybody just to raise your hand and say, God, you are bigger than any of my problems today. Yield that to him and drop us a comment in the chat box, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place.
Amen.